I'm Spencer Mazyck, and joining me now is Jeff Herman. He represents three men who have accused puppeteer Kevin Clash of engaging in sexual activity with them when they were minors. And until recently, Mr. Clash had been the voice of Sesame Street's Elmo. Jeff joins us from his office in Miami, Florida. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining us today.
Sure. Glad to be here.
So, Jeff, there have actually been four men who have come forward alleging sexual activity with Mr. Clash while underage, but you don't represent the first accuser, Sheldon Stevens. Is that right?
Correct. I represent the second, third, and the fourth accuser.
Didn't Mr. Stevens recant his statement in a settlement with Mr. Clash?
Well, I wasn't involved in that case, but just from what I have seen and read about, I don't know that he's ever recanted. I know that he did say he had an adult relationship with Kevin Clash, which most of my victims also did. They continued their relationship into adulthood. But so I don't think we have all the facts in Sheldon's case, and I would wait till we do to make any kind of judgment on that.
So what are your client's specific allegations against the man who has been the voice of Elmo for 28 years?
Right. Well, what my clients are alleging is that when they were teenagers, they met Kevin Clash, a couple of them on a particular chat line, which was actually a phone line. This is prior to these computer chat lines. And they spoke with Kevin Clash and were invited to come visit him to his apartment. And once there, were groomed and given some special attention, et cetera, and then ultimately engaged in some sort of sexual activity with Kevin Clash.
Well, and didn't they file civil suits in a Manhattan federal court? But I'm curious, though, if the allegations are true, can you tell us why criminal charges weren't sought?
Well, the statute of limitations for the criminal cases is different than it is in civil cases. And ultimately, the DA in New York makes that decision whether or not they're going to bring charges. My clients, I always encourage them to report it to the authorities. I know that some of them have formally done that and the others are waiting to hear how that process is going to work. But that's their call whether or not they can file criminal charges.
And what's the statute of limitations for these civil claims?
Well, as you mentioned, I filed in federal court. And so we're proceeding under a particular federal law where the statute is 6 years, and we're alleging from time of discovery that you actually have a claim. And for these men, they were what we call compliant victims, meaning that they were participating and they couldn't consent because they weren't old enough to consent, but they always considered themselves to be sort of isolated cases and never realized that there were other victims out there. In fact, Cecil didn't come forward until he saw the first case and said, you know what, and everyone was attacking this first victim, and he said, I need to come forward, number one, to support this victim. Number two, because he realized that this was a pattern in his mind, and he wanted to speak out to protect these other victims.
So is it your argument then that the time of discovery is when they learned about the first accuser, Sheldon Stevens, coming forward?
Basically, when they learned that this was a sort of a pattern and that they were victimized. Now, we're proceeding under federal law. In the state court, New York has a very different and a much shorter civil statute of limitations, which we did not obviously bring those claims.
Well, so how much collectively are the plaintiffs seeking here in damages?
No specific amount other than, I would say, I know in Cecil's case, we said damages exceed $5 million. I think anytime a child sexually abused, the damages are significant, but ultimately a jury will make that determination.
Well, and actually, the second accuser, Cecil, has been quoted as saying that he would, in fact, drop the complaint here if Mr. Clash would actually admit to what happened. Is that true?
That is true. That is true. He stands by that. He basically wants and asks that Kevin Clash admit what had happened and apologize to him.
Well, and I want to mention that Mr. Clash, through his attorney, Michael Berger, has stated that these allegations are without merit and that they will fight vigorously to defend the lawsuits. But do you think that we're going to see more people surface making similar allegations here?
I think it's very possible. What happens all the time in these kinds of cases, from my perspective, is that when someone's accused and they sort of attack the accuser and deny it, the other victims feel that they need to come forward almost to defend the first victim. The other thing that happens is that, as we know, victims of sexual abuse as children are very reluctant to come forward for lots of reasons. One of them is that there's this sort of power that's taken from them when they're kids and they're abused, and they feel powerless to do something about it. But when they see other victims coming forward, there's this collective empowerment that they get from each other, and they use that to kind of get the strength to then come forward and bring their claims. So in this case, I know that that was the case with a couple of my clients, and so it's very possible that there are others.
Have you heard from any other people? Are you vetting other potential clients?
I am actually vetting some other cases, but I can't go beyond that.
Okay. Well, what do you say to folks who say that the clients that you have, the folks who have come forward, want nothing more than just money and or attention?
Well, you know, our system of justice is all they can seek is money damages. There is no magic wand. I hear that in every single case that I bring for someone who's been sexually abused, that you're seeking money. Well, that is all you can do in a civil case. They all would prefer the magic wand to take away what had happened. Doesn't exist. But I would say in these cases in particular, I think it's interesting because, like Cecil said, he really doesn't see himself as being damaged like a typical victim. He said himself that he was more sexualized and sophisticated than most teens his age. And really what he was looking for was for validation and vindication, which is why he made that offer to literally dismiss his case for nothing if Kevin Clash would admit it.
And in Cecil's case, too, you said that he was more sophisticated sexually, but that still doesn't take away the fact that he was underage. I mean, it doesn't matter whether or not he consented to this act, correct?
Right, absolutely. He can't consent because he's underage. He's compliant, but the bottom line is it is never all right for an adult to have sex with a child.
Now, it's worth noting that in 2011, you actually got a $100 million verdict on behalf of a client who was allegedly sexually abused by a Roman Catholic priest. Is that an unprecedented award in a case like this?
Well, I think it's my understanding it's the largest award ever against in the Catholic Church for one victim, and so it's significant. But it really represents to me how damaging these cases can be and how awful and destructive it is for the victims. And in that particular case, there was a long history of that priest committing these crimes against children without being stopped. And so the jury was trying to, I think, hopefully send a message out there.
You handle mostly sexual abuse cases. How do you find your clients?
Well, I only handle sexual abuse cases now, and because of that, I do cases all over the country. People find me on the internet. Lawyers know of me. They refer me cases. I do a lot of speaking to groups and to victims, and so this really is. And it's not just my legal work. It's also sort of my passion. And I do a lot of volunteer work for victims. I train DCF workers on how to interview children, and so I'm very immersed in this. And it's very rewarding work for me, and I believe that these civil cases, if handled the right way, help victims heal. And so that's really what it's about for me.
And do you sometimes find it hard, though, to listen to their stories?
Well, yes, but actually, several years ago, I reached a point where I was going to stop doing these cases because it was so hard to hear day after day. I'm a dad, I have 4 kids, and they're very dark stories that I hear. But I actually went and I did this biometric training where they work and teach you how to be empathetic and not sympathetic. So empathetic meaning where you understand someone's pain and you're empowered to help them, as opposed to being sympathetic where you own that pain yourself. And that's been a real changer for me, a life change, where I'm able to take these cases on and not let it affect me and prevent me or stop me from doing the work.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for joining us today, Jeff. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
For more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.